Episode 87, The City of Hazor. Welcome to the History of the Bible. We'll be covering chapter 11 in today's episode. In the last episode, we discussed the Israelites and the Northern Alliance meeting each other in battle. Although it wasn't all that much of a battle, and that the Israelites came upon the Northern King's armies and surprised them. This caused them to panic and run. The Israelites would chase them down and kill them along the road. It was after this victory for the Israelites that they returned from attacking the fleeing armies and sieged the city of Hazor. The city of Hazor was very influential in the northern area of Canaan, as it was one of the largest in the region. Therefore, when Joshua and the Israelites attacked and conquered the city of Hazor, they burned it down. Thus, it would reduce the enemy's center of power. To go into how influential the city of Hazor was, it is believed that the city itself was actually under the dominion of Egypt. How much control the Egyptians had over the city is unknown. The city, though, under the control of Egypt, did have much freedom to do as it pleased. However, the Egyptians recognized the influence the city had over the whole land of Canaan. Today, there has been discovered a sphinx, and it has the name of an Egyptian king on it that ruled between the years 2551 and 2523 BC, 400 years before Abraham was alive. Although the king whose name is on the Sphinx did not send the Sphinx to the city himself, it would later be sent to the city after it came under the Egyptian rule around 1485 BC. The other Egyptian statues that have been found in the city, having more Egyptian statues than any other city in the land of Canaan, scholars believe that the Sphinx was sent to the city of Hazor in the first place to be set up in the prominent palace as a symbol of Egyptians' dominance over the city. This Sphinx and the statues are important because they show how the city of Hazor was the central location of influence in much of the land of Canaan. In addition to the physical evidence within the city of Hazor, records mention the city over 20 times, about ambassadors and caravans full of goods to trade coming and going from the city. As a side note, reading through the chapter of Joshua 11, one can get the feeling that the battle happened very quickly, and then all of a sudden it's over. Very much like the Southern Campaign. But it must be remembered that scholars believe the whole conquest of the land of Canaan took around 7 years. So it didn't just happen in a couple of days, as it may seem. Yes, the major battles of the southern and northern campaigns may have been quick, but conquering each of the city of the defeated kings took time. The cities were still protected by forces left behind in the city's fortifications. Plus, the time it took to march the whole Israelite army from city to city is never mentioned, but it does take time to do so. The other reason why the conquest may seem so strange is that it was the style of recording battles and campaigns in ancient times. The first two major cities were written in great detail, just like Jericho and Ai, but the rest of the battles were simply mentioned in passing. This way of writing is seen all over ancient records. As for the city of Hazor, it was conquered. The city itself is believed to have a population of about 20 to 30,000 people within the walls. That doesn't mean that there weren't more people living outside the walls, but within the estimated amount, it is at 20 to 30,000. Unfortunately, there is no record of how the siege went against Hazor. How long did it take? What plan of action was used to get past its defenses? Or the thoughts of the people within the city would not be known. However, we do know the results of the battle. This can be found in excavations that have been done in the city. The city was one of 3 total cities that were burned when the Israelites conquered it. The other two cities within the land of Canaan were Jericho and Ai. Otherwise, the other cities remained intact and were later settled in by the Israelites. When the excavations of Hazor first began, evidence of the city being destroyed pointed to the dates around 1230 BC. However, those findings were discovered between 1955 and 1969. Today, there have been more discoveries that another destruction of the city happened before 1230 BC. The first one is believed to have occurred between 1455 and 1400 BC, the exact time that Joshua and the Israelites are believed to be in the land of Canaan. The discoveries within the city of Hazor consist of layers of ash and burnt wooden beams, indicating the destruction done by fire. However, there is another evidence of the city's fall. Excavations of the city have found numerous temples that were dedicated to cult worshipping. Evidence shows that these temples were violently destroyed, whereas the domestic homes were not attacked with the same intensity. But it wasn't just that the temple buildings were targeted. No, everything within was attacked. Evidence shows that the shrines and cultic objects were all gone after. Statues, idols, and figures of gods and cultic items have their heads decapitated and their hands removed. This was a prevalent thing for the Israelites to do, and the act of doing so has become known as a unique practice to Israel. One of the largest Canaanite statues of a human form has been found in the ashes of Hazor. Standing about 3 feet tall and weighing nearly 2,000 pounds, the basalt statue had its head decapitated and the hands removed. Then it was smashed within a 6 foot wide circle. The majority of the statues within the city all have signs of chisel marks, indicating that someone deliberately removed their arms and heads. It is said that the palaces of the city of Hazor used more timber in their construction than most other structures, with support beams that would be used to hold up the structures, as well as wooden planks that were used as flooring. Because of this and the large amount of oil that was stored in the town, the temperatures are believed to have reached well over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Because of the intense heat, turning the mud brick walls into glass, the basalt slabs cracked and the clay vessels melted. Today, the discovery of the king's palace, the one who led the Northern Alliance to join, has been found underneath a thick layer of ash and debris. The city itself has two sections, the upper and the lower. The upper, also known as the Acropolis, is where most temples and the palace stood. The lower part of the city houses the residence. The upper city was located on top of a hill, accessed from the lower section of the city with a staircase. Unlike Jericho, the city itself did not have a set of walls separating the city's two parts. However, atop of the stairs stood two small watchtowers that overlooked the entry into the Acropolis. As residents came up the flight of stairs, they would pass through an entryway where a square podium sat, where either a statue of a deity stood or the throne of a king sat. All this shows is that the city of Hazor was not just a small city that the Israelites had to deal with. Hazor was a central power to the land of Canaan, not only for power, also religion. With all of its temples and palaces, it housed many of the Canaanites' deities. So destroying the city would communicate throughout the land of Canaan that the most powerful city and its armies had fallen, and that the God of the Israelites has conquered the deities of the people in the land of Canaan. If we remember, all wars in ancient times were connected to the spiritual, making them all holy wars. A people group's gods and goddesses were supposed to keep them safe. However, if they were conquered, the enemy's gods and goddesses were believed to be stronger than their own. So when the city fell, the land of Canaan got the message. The God of the Israelites was stronger than their gods. After the destruction of Hazor, the rest of the kingdoms that belonged to the kings within the northern alliance would fall. Joshua and the Israelites would go to each of the kingdoms and conquer them. However, none of the other cities were destroyed. When the Israelites defeated the northern alliance in the battle at the waters of Merom, it would have destroyed most of the armies from the different cities. This would leave the kingdoms undefended for the most part, making it a quicker siege when coming to each city. In Joshua 11, verse 12, Joshua took all these royal cities and their kings and put them to the sword. He destroyed them, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded. This would remove the threat from the remaining northern alliance. However, Joshua 11, verse 21 mentions that after all the battles were concluded, Joshua and the Israelites turned and fought against the people of Anakim. So, after the battle of the northern alliance and the Israelites defeating all the kings within the alliance, Joshua turned to fight the people of Anakim, who were believed to be the descendants of Anak. Although, if they were related to the branch of giants known as the Nephilims, it isn't sure. However, we do know that the people of Anakim were still tall, as the word Anak means long-necked ones, and the Israelites feared their height. This is the first time that it mentions giants in the land of Canaan, even though the main reason that the Israelites spent 40 years in the wilderness because of the fear they had facing the giants of the land. They would call themselves grasshoppers before the giants. However, up until this point, based on the records, the Israelites had not yet faced any giants within the land. Now, they had faced giants when conquering the land on the east side of the Jordan River, but not in the west. In Joshua 11, verses 21 through 22, it says that Joshua came at that point and cut off the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, and from the hill country of Judah, and from all the hill country of Israel. Joshua devoted them to destruction with their cities. There was none of the Anakim left in the land of the people of Israel. Only in Gaza and Gath and Ashdod did some remain. These were the people that the 12 spies saw and feared when they came to spy out the land before their wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. However, this battle with the Anakims wasn't clear when it happened. The Bible reads that Joshua and the Israelites went from fighting the northern campaign to attacking the Anakims, who lived in the southern part of Canaan. One would think that they would have attacked during the southern campaign, not after the northern campaign, but that might be different. Later on, we will read about Caleb being given the land as an inheritance for his descendants, and he would attack the cities in which the giants lived. Therefore, it could be that though it says right after the campaign in the north that Joshua and the Israelites moved to attack the Anakims in the south, it might have been after the land was divided into different tribes. We'll discuss the battle that Caleb faced in a later episode. As for the Israelites, this would conclude the battles within the land of Canaan. As it says in Joshua 11, verse 23, so Joshua took control of the entire land, just as the Lord had instructed Moses. So the land finally had rest from war. Though it may seem that the battles within the land of Canaan were quick, that isn't the case. From start to finish, from crossing the Jordan River to the last battle that Joshua fought, it is believed to have taken 7 years. Scholars come to this date because it is believed that Caleb, one of the 12 spies from before wandering in the wilderness, was 40 years old. When Joshua finally finished with the battles that he fought, he says that Caleb was 85 years old. This would make it clear that 45 years had passed since Moses sent the spies into the land of Canaan. The spies went into the land of Canaan in the second year of the Exodus, meaning that it had been about 2 years since they left Egypt. This would leave 38 of the 40 years remaining for the Israelites to wander in the wilderness. The Israelites wandered for a total of 40 years. It wasn't 40 years on top of what they already had spent just after leaving Egypt. Subtracting 38 from 45 would leave 7 years that were spent in the Israelites conquering the land of Canaan. Again, going through the accounts mentioned in the book of Joshua, the northern and southern campaigns, it doesn't seem to take 7 years. However, it took time for the armies to march across the land. Although the two main campaigns are finished within the land of Canaan, that doesn't mean that the fight for the land promised to the Israelites was finished. It would continue to be fought for throughout the coming generation. So join us next time as we take a step back to look at how far the Israelites have come in the battle for the land of Canaan. In episode 88, the division of land. Until next time, remember that you are loved, special, and worthwhile.